Hello everyone and welcome to Leonora AstroTarot. Thank you for joining me today. I am really happy that you have chosen to come over to my little corner of the internet. I know there's so much out there, so much to click on and so many ways for you to spend your time here on YouTube. Yeah, do welcome if this is your first time on my channel. Most likely it is because this is a very new channel. I've been going for a couple of weeks now. I am both a tarot reader and also an astrologer. So I do speak quite a lot about astrology in these readings, in my pick a card readings. Today I'm going to be doing a what is your intuition trying to tell you reading, and it's sort of inspired by Neptune. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Neptune in this intro. If you're not interested in the astrology, then timestamps will be down below. You can jump ahead to your pick a pile and get straight to your reading. But if you are interested in a little Neptune chat, then do stick around. Neptune is currently in the sign of Pisces. It has been there for nearly 10 years. Neptune, in terms of the planets that we work with in astrology, of course, for instance, Neptune is sort of the furthest orbit planet we work with, considering Pluto has been sort of demoted. Pluto was a planet. I think officially it isn't. For astrological purposes, I say it is. It's certainly an incredibly powerful planetary body, right? But when we get to the outer planets, which officially I would consider Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, we're talking about some very slow orbits and some very powerful change they can bring into our lives. But yes, Neptune is in Pisces, which is sort of its home sign, really. Neptune rules Pisces. The traditional ruler was Jupiter back before Neptune was discovered. But yeah, in modern day astrology, we do tend to associate Neptune with the sign of Pisces. Neptune speaks to the intangible, right? Our connection with spirit, with the divine, things like that, yes, but also Neptunian energy, particularly when it's not well integrated in the chart, speaks to escapism and a boundarylessness, so a kind of detachment from the more Saturn-like real-world structures around us, and that ability to kind of lose yourself in your dreams and your fantasies. So it speaks both of illusions and delusions, of our most fanciful daydreams and creative and artistic qualities, but also our ability to lose ourselves and self-destruct and escape our reality and struggle with reality. So I don't think of any planet as being either malefic or benefic. I find these kind of categorizing the planets as good or bad is not helpful, because astrology is nuanced, and every one of the signs, the planets, they have their positives and negatives, right? I mean, Venus, Venus is one of those planets that sort of, when we speak about the negatives of Venus, it sort of seems like an over abundance, sort of like Jupiter. Jupiter, I would say, I've spoken a little bit about this before. I certainly have my personal struggles with Jupiter, but hey, that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about Neptune. So more specifically, right, Neptune right now is at 22 degrees of Pisces. It has been in its home sign of Pisces since 2012. Wow. And we'll stay there until 2025. So we're sort of in the last degrees. We're at 22 degrees. Neptune is currently in a sextile with Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto is currently at 24 degrees of Capricorn. So these two, Neptune and Pluto, have been pretty sort of, they've been in sort of close relationship, really, in these later degrees of kind of complementary signs, an earth sign and a water sign. Neptune is currently retrograde, yeah. And when will it be direct? Let me just check. Neptune direct in Pisces. Sorry for being so slow. December. There we go. So for those of you that might be, well, certainly if you have a significant Pisces placement, of course it depends on the degrees. If that's an early degree Pisces placement, you will have already experienced a conjunction to that placement. If you are a Virgo, Neptune in Pisces will bring oppositions by way of transit, which can be very challenging. It can make it very hard to define your boundaries. It can create a lot of fog and confusion in your reality. But really, wherever a major planet is, it affects all of the signs in its shared modality most significantly. So when we speak of modalities, we're talking, for instance, about mutability, fixed signs, cardinal signs. Pisces is a mutable sign. So these sort of quadrants of mutability, they speak to the signs that are sort of forming a square. So the mutable signs are Pisces, its sister sign or opposing sign of Virgo, and the signs that also square it, the mutable signs that square it, which are Sagittarius and Gemini. So all of these signs are what we call mutable. So if you have a significant placement in Sagittarius or Gemini, you will have been experiencing a square over this very long transit, of course, and it is so long, the orbits that the outer planets make, that the transits, the personal transits to these placements often last a couple of years. It doesn't mean that you're sort of, it's directly affecting you for the entirety of that period. It's not really like that. The planets are always moving. They're also frequently retrograding and moving back, sort of reverse gear, like over the same placements. But yeah, I mean, of course, when any planet is in any sign, it is making a kind of complementary angle to those in their fellow signs, so water signs. So if you are Scorpio or Cancer, or you have significant Scorpio or Cancer placements, Neptune would have trined those placements. For the earth signs that are not Virgo, so Capricorn and Taurus, we have a lovely sextile aspect that's coming from Neptune in Pisces. Virgo and Pisces have a much more complex relationship. So Virgos are some of those that are most affected by this transit of Neptune in Pisces. One of the things, now, if you're unsure about your relationship to Neptune, because of course the way we experience these transits is really affected, I think, most of all by the signature in our natal chart. So the aspects that planet is making in your natal chart. If you're someone that has a lot of flowing trines or sextiles between Neptune and your placements in your chart, the Neptune transits, even if they're difficult transits, are probably much easier for you to handle, because you just integrate Neptune's whole vibe in a positive way. If you have challenging aspects, for instance, if you're a Gemini and you have a natal square to your sun from Neptune, and then Neptune comes around, makes another square, that's going to be particularly challenging, because it's sort of activating something that's innate in you, right? So it doesn't have to be a square, it can be an opposition, a semi-square, just any challenging relationship between those two bodies. It almost speaks to a kind of potential, right? It's something that you have to learn about yourself. There's already a sensitivity there. If you would like to go through your own personal chart one-on-one with me, you can check out all the info in the description box below. I would say that it's very, very important that you have an to the minute birth time. Your birth time has to be accurate, and if you're unsure, let's say you have a kind of 15-minute window guesstimate. A lot can change in 15 minutes in the cosmos, the instance of your birth is like a snapshot of the cosmos in that moment, and it's as if you hold that imprint within you. It speaks to something about your kind of soul plan, right? If you believe in that, if you want to look at it that way, I often look at it that way. But it's very important that it's exactly to the minute, because the planets are always orbiting. It only takes a minute to shift a significant planetary placement A person whose sun is in the 12th house has a very different life motivation to one who is in the 1st or the 11th house, for instance. So I always really, really encourage against purchasing a natal chart if you don't know your birth time. There is ways that you can find out that might take a little bit more time if your parents or whoever doesn't know. I think sometimes you can reach out to the hospital that you were born in or something like that it will be on paper somewhere if it's not on your birth certificate. But there's always these automated sites in the meantime that can give you an impression. They can give you an impression, but they're not personalized, and they're very much like, you have to consider every placement in relation to all other placements. Like you can't look at it as standing alone, because that's not who you are. You're not a series of boxes and compartments. There's all this flowing that's happening between the two. Everything is corresponding with everything else, which is why these automated birth charts, while they might be interesting and an interesting introduction, if you do want to go deeper with them, I would also really recommend that if you're looking at your transits, for instance, on the automated sites, they can often be very alarming and kind of overly dramatic, and you should never be anxious about these things. It's just it's energy, and astrology is all about self-awareness. I think it is a tool for increased self-awareness and understanding our inner conflicts and tendencies and our strengths, of course, all of those things. But the transits just want to unlock the potential, and sometimes we learn the hard way, right? Sometimes that's the way we need to learn. So please don't be daunted or intimidated by these silly interpretations that you can sometimes see on these automated sites. I do transit readings, and it's important to look at the transit in the context of your life and in the context of your chart. But I like talking about these energies, and I like talking about the harder stuff. And Neptune, when it is being tough on us, can often confuse us. It's sort of, let's imagine if you're experiencing a difficult transit from Neptune, or you have a difficult relationship with Neptune in your natal chart. Imagine you're driving a car, right? And you're moving through life, and then all of a sudden the windscreen mists over. And I'm just going with this metaphor, it's just the windscreen mists over, and you reach for the the windscreen wipes, but they're not working. So you try something else, you try a cloth, but that's not working either. Techniques that you might have used in order to clarify your vision, in order to navigate, no longer work. So this often is the way that Neptune works with us via transit. It mists over our perspective. And the purpose of this is that so we learn to go within, to not rely on external things to direct us, but to learn to reflect inward and navigate from within. Now, it's like we often forget to do this. We often don't do it because we become lazy, and we do rely on just sort of the surfaces of things. Difficult Neptune transits, as foggy and confusing as they can be, it can become very hard to define things around us. Everything is sort of mysterious and amorphous. Of course, if you're experiencing this right now, know that this will pass. But the purpose of it often is to get us to go within and connect with our intuition, our deeper sense of what is real and true. So to bring us back to today, from the pick a card that we're doing today, we want guidance around what your intuition is currently trying to tell you. We want to try and interpret and translate those things in a clear way. Of course, these are general readings, so take it always with a grain of salt. Always be discerning. You'll know what's meant for you. My intention here is to give clarity and guidance for you to know that you are seen and you are not alone, but it's not to dictate how you should live your life or make your decisions for you. You know your life. With all of that said, let's get to this reading. What is your intuition trying to tell you? We have 4 piles. Pile 1 is the Amethyst. Pile 2 is the orange Calcite. Pile 3 is the Amazonite. And pile 4 is the Lapis Lazuli. As ever, let your eye draw you to where it wants to go. If that's more than one pile, that's absolutely fine. There's likely more than one message for you. if your eye is darting about and it's hard for you to settle on one, I do recommend taking a moment, coming back to this video later, and then picking your pile when you're in a different mindset. Yeah, so I will leave you here to pick your pile, and I will see you in your reading. Hello, pile 1, and welcome to your reading. You picked the Amethyst. Today we are asking, what is your intuition trying to tell you? So perhaps you've been experiencing signs and synchronicities, messages, but you're not really sure how to interpret them. Or perhaps you feel very disconnected from your intuition right now. Perhaps you feel a little confused and you're looking for some guidance. Maybe you have very vivid dreams, but it's hard also just to know what the message is. As I said in the intro, these are general readings, so really take only what feels like it's meant for you. I'd also like to say that today I'm working with a new deck, which is the Rune deck. This is by the artist Sophie McKay, and I usually work with her painted tarot. I'm a tarot reader, and I work with the tarot, and I know the tarot very well. But I'm new to the runes, so this is a new kind of method of divination. If you don't know about it, it's sort of rooted in kind of medieval or pagan Nordic mythology. It was a kind of method of communication and used over time as a kind of oracle. But so I'm going to incorporate these rune cards today in your reading, Paul 1. But it is quite new for me. I've been sort of sitting with this deck and also trying to learn some of the meanings of this, these rune symbolism. If you are someone, for instance, that's learning the tarot for the first time, one thing I would recommend if you've got, for instance, a new tarot deck is, have a look at these descriptions of the interpretations, but then perhaps summarize them in your own words. And write them down. I think writing things down and noting them and interpreting them in your own way is a really important part of getting to know your deck. But I just thought I would add that. I may have to look up some of these rune meanings because, I want to give you guys some accurate info here in terms of what these cards might like to convey to you about whatever it is you're facing. Perhaps there's nothing in particular right now that you're confused about, but you would like to know. If there is anything that you should know, I think there's always things that our higher self, our deeper self would like to get across to us. I'm not going to turn over all these cards at once. I'd like to go through this read kind of slowly and spend some time with each card. Let me just check this. Let's just shuffle a little bit more this way so that you can see. Okay, so let's see which runes you got, Paul 1. We have Suello. These words are very new to me, so I'm not sure that I'm completely pronouncing them right. We have Suello and we have Isa. Interesting, a lot of very feminine energy. You don't have to be female, but there is a femininity, a strong sense of female strength that's coming through to me. So Suella, I do believe this is sort of a symbol of sort of fertility, of harvest. Isa has quite a different vibe, I believe. Isa does speak to potentially isolation and also release and letting things go and letting things slip away. There's something about this, and I love these. I absolutely love this artwork. That is the info on the rune deck will be down below, but there's something as if she's been showering or cleansed of something. You know what this is reminding me? I don't know if those of you that are interested in art, if you know the work of the video artist Bill Viola, and he creates these incredible slow-mo videos of times of people just sort of almost being in this sort of midst of a waterfall and things like that. They're very, very highly emotional sort of states made almost material through the video, and this is the vibe this Isa card is giving me. This need to truly surrender to some difficult emotions. It may be that those of you, if you picked pile 1, you have been holding on tight to something energetically, emotionally, like it's almost like internally there's been this sort of tightened fist, and it's maybe not that you're determined not to let something go. I don't get that impression. It's more like it's second nature to you that you're holding this thing inside, or perhaps you haven't been aware of how tightly you have held on to something that needs to be released. Allowing that to happen may feel very frightening, or it may feel like too big a change to just let go of something, but that's what this rune card is really asking for you. We want to know what your intuition is telling you, so you may really sense this, pile 1, that it is time to let something go. What that is will be very different for each of you, but I think it's also speaking to, so there's an organic ending here that does need to happen. You've reached the point that whatever this is that you've been holding on to has become, yes, a burden, but it's more like it's causing this internal restriction, or it's sort of blockage. It's causing like what is the word I'm looking for? It's blocking flow. It's preventing you from flowing in a natural and beautiful way. And I think in the past, maybe you wanted to hold on to something so tightly, and you felt that you couldn't live without it, but you've got to this point where it's become too big a price to hold on to it. You know that you have to let it go in order to breathe freely and to move with ease, to truly let your energy circulate in the way that it needs to let things come to you. But the thing is, I think for some of you, it just feels like too much of an ending. It feels like, I think you know this, we're asking what your intuition is telling you, and I'm probably just speaking what you already know here, but perhaps just need to have clarified, is that I do have a sense, for some of you perhaps it's just been months, for others years, you've known that something had to be let go, but it's hard for you to imagine what it looks like without that thing, what life looks like without that thing that you've been holding on to, that you sort of, perhaps you don't know any other way of being and living than having whatever this is as a part of you. But at this point, it's as if you're paying too big a price. It's blocking too many other things and the natural progress and order of your world to maintain whatever this is. Let me just for a moment have a look at this Suello. You see, this Suello card is that is showing up sort of at the head of this read, speaks to success. It speaks to self-knowledge and being one's true and individual self. So that's an incredible message. I do think that whatever it is that you've been holding on to, pile 1, has almost blocked a real sense of your self-realization, your individuation, you might say. Like, there's something that needs to grow and evolve here, but it can only happen with some kind of release. But I think you sense and perhaps intuit that there's, at this point, you have so much to gain. So it isn't the same kind of trade-off that it may have once seemed to you, pile 1. You have perhaps thought that you couldn't live without whatever this thing is, but at this point you cannot live with it, because you've grown, you have evolved, you have changed. But I can feel it. I can feel what's on this card. It also maybe isn't, what are we saying when we're speaking of letting things go and releasing them? It's not as simple as just unclasping a fist and opening our hand. Sometimes we have to grieve and sort of purge and allow a lot of painful emotions to circulate through us and to leave us. And it's knowing that that's painful. It's incredibly painful, but we will feel so much better on the other side. Your instincts here are reassuring you of that, or are confirming that as frightening as it may feel to let this thing go, there is so much waiting for you on the other side. Let's have a look at here. Interesting that we have the self, because I think, Suello speaks of real embodying yourself, individuality, and all of that. So I do think in many cases it is about choosing yourself and letting go of the needs of others, the expectations of others, certain relationships, and choosing yourself, because I think that you've perhaps, it's like there are parts of yourself that you've restricted, and I'm just seeing a kind of wheel here, sort of like a wheel of fortune, and it wants to spin and evolve, and there's so much potential here and so much ripeness, and this is ready to happen. You are ready for this change, pile one. But the self, the way this is almost like wheel spokes, and there's sort of, they're like little, it's as if you need every puzzle, they're like puzzle pieces. You need every piece of yourself to be present in this whole picture in order for this wheel to spin and progress to happen and needed change to come into your life. It's not going to happen, it's not going to move unless every piece is in its place. So if you have repressed certain parts of yourself, if you have suppressed, if you have neglected or evaded, avoided, all of these things, like if there are parts of yourself that you have blocked, that you have ignored, it's important for you to retrieve those pieces in order for this wheel to spin and for you to get these blessings and good things that want to come your way. This is reminding me of this kind of shamanic idea of soul fracturing that can happen when we are traumatized, when we go through very difficult life experiences. It's as if we leave a part of ourselves in the past. If you know anything about sort of the psychology of trauma, for instance, if you have some kind of flashback, it is sort of neurologically also, we are time traveling back to that point in time. So sometimes it's difficult to know how to heal these things. Many of you may have been and are on a healing journey, and I fully support and encourage that. It's unavoidable work, right? As painful as it is, that we bring all of these parts of ourselves back to the present, that we can't leave a part of ourselves somewhere back in sort of 1992, 2000, or somewhere, that you need yourself, your inner child, yourself at 12, at 19, yourself at 20, 25, however old you are. There needs to be some kind of unification here. So you probably know, we're asking for messages from your intuition, and you probably already know these things that I'm telling you, but let's have a look what our animal ally would like to contribute. Dog. Oh, I love this dog. Divine service. How can you serve yourself better? So again, self. This is all about yourself, and it's about putting yourself first. It's also about I was speaking about the inner child just now, and about there's a siren there, just give it a minute. How can you serve yourself? Yeah, it's about having compassion, right, for yourself at different periods of time. And for instance, if you had gone through some kind of childhood trauma, getting to the point on your journey where you have the strength and maturity and awareness to sort of come to the aid of your younger self, to be that ally. How can you serve yourself? And perhaps when we do trauma work and things like that, taking that kind of approach and perspective, this idea that you are coming to the aid of yourself in a different time and moment, and having the strength to do that, and also having this compassion for yourself. It's very hard to have compassion for yourself in the moment, I find. We can try, but I think this is why the whole notion, the ideas about self-love is challenging. I think too often we mistake it for self-pity, right? If we're caring and loving towards ourselves, we tend to be so incredibly tough on ourselves and send our compassion towards other people. But when it comes to the younger versions of ourselves, it's a bit different. We're able to distinguish them from us in the present. And that's what you're being asked to do, to have this compassion and caring sort of serval coming to the service of yourself. This is very important work. Chiron, Chiron is an asteroid, which, if you don't know, in astrology, sort of, Chiron is often referred to as the wounded healer. I'm going to do soon a Chiron video about healing. Chiron is currently in Aries, so in the sign before Neptune. Neptune is in Pisces, as we went over in the intro in my Astro Ramble. But Chiron is about healing. Chiron is about our deepest wounds, like our Achilles heel, just that tender spot that never seems to go away. I do think that those of you that picked Pile 1, you are at this point in time where you acknowledge that the only way to move forward is by going back and healing some old wounds. For each of you, this would have happened, or whatever this wound or trauma or pain, it will look different, and it will be occurring in a different time frame, right? But either way, it's like you're having to face some of your deepest pain and deepest wounds, but you are ready, and that's what your intuition wants to let you know here, that you are more than capable, that you have that strength. Part of it is just you're being asked to sit in your fear, and I can understand, and I totally relate to that resistance, the fear, the unknown, all of that. What does it look like on the other side? But your intuition is telling you have nothing to fear. Just facing your fears. So we can't pretend that your fears aren't there, but just to take a different approach to your fear. Your fears can't hurt you. Rather than saying you have nothing to fear, it's putting fear in its proper place, right? You can acknowledge it's there, but not allow it to hold you back. You're being asked to be courageous, to be fearless in ways that maybe you haven't before, as you embark on this healing journey. Like this Chiron energy, this is an easy energy. This is our deepest wound, right? There is, for you Pile 1s, you are at a moment in time where you are having to face this and let go of some of the emotions and some of the deep pain that you've carried around with you. And yes, it will be different for each of you, but it will mean letting go of a lot. But you are more than capable of doing this, and you are ready. That readiness. It's about doing it for yourself to be whole, so that you can live your own life, so that you can be a part of your own life, that your pain isn't getting in your way. Let's have a look at the tarot cards that came up for you. We have the Four of Wands, we have the Eight of Wands, we have the King of Cups, we have the King of Pentacles. Interesting. I can't remember which reading it was. If you have been having a look at any of my previous videos, I can't remember what it was. It may have been in my What's Next in Love reading that I did when Venus enters Libra. But in that read, the King of Cups and the King of Pentacles both showed up side by side in this way. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the What's Next in Love reading, or maybe it was the full moon reading. I've been doing a lot of reading, so it's hard for me to remember, but this must be related, because for them to come out this way again together in the same order seems very notable. Let's have a look here. Pile 1, this Four of Wands. Immediately when I saw this, everything we've been talking about having compassion for the younger version of you, right? Another siren going by. Immediately when I saw this, we have one person taking another by the hand and leading them, and the Four of Wands is a very joyful, very festive card of celebration, of good times. So again, your intuition is telling you that good times are coming. There's so much to be gained from working through these things and facing some of these more painful memories, experiences, trauma, whatever it is. But the way, because the characters on this card, they're very similar looking, right? They're mirroring each other. They almost could be the same person. They have the same hair. So if we imagine that this is you taking yourself by the hand and having this deep self-love and self-compassion, and knowing that no one is going to no one else is going to do it for you. You have to be your own ally. You have to care for yourself. You have to be sort of the guide, that the guru, the assistance that you so desperately have needed. Perhaps you have the strength now, you have the life experience, you have the insight, you have the wisdom, and most importantly, you have the spiritual strength. You have the spiritual spiritual awareness and connection to be able to carry yourself out of this dark space. And it may have been a long time for you. This may be a long time coming. The Eight of Wands, the Eight of Wands is a card that it's movement, right? The Eight of Wands is sort of a kind of, it always speaks to change and progress, and things are happening. But if you let them, what I'm feeling, and also this wheel thing, and I was sort of thinking of wheel spokes, it's like so much wants to happen in your life, Part 1. And it wants to move forward. It has been moving forward for some time, and the only thing that is preventing it is you're holding on to things that no longer serve you, and it has to do with not facing old wounds, bringing all of yourself to the center, right? Really returning to who you truly are. Again, your intuition is reassuring you and wanting to let you know that there's so much to be gained from this. You have already grown so much and been through so much. And you may sense this, you may be intuiting this, that there is something joyous on the horizon for you. It's about creating space for those things to come in, which means removing things. This Eight of Wands, there's a full moon here that's sort of pinging me on this card, and we have just moved through a full moon. There's something about the next full moon here. So I'm not sure when I'm going to be posting this reading, but it will be between the full moon in Aquarius and the full moon in Pisces. So interestingly, obviously Pisces being in Neptune, as we have been, or Neptune being in Pisces, the other way around. There's I think a big shift that will be coming between these two full moons. Whatever it is, take note of the full moon in Pisces as it comes up. Let me check the date of that. The full moon in Pisces obviously happens in Virgo season, which we have just entered. I really want to check the date of the full moon. Full moon in Pisces, it is at 28 degrees, so not quite conjunct Neptune. It will be on the 22nd of September, this 2-2. Yeah, we have two kings here. It's so strange, this is exactly like what happened in another read, so I do think I'm tapping into somebody's storyline here, or more than one of you, but just to complete what I was saying, take note, if you can mark the full moon in Pisces in some way, I think it is significant for you. Those of you that pick this pile, in terms of an energy shift or culmination, I do think that there are people orbiting, I was saying, and I don't like to prophesize. I say on these reads, I don't like to prophesize, and I don't like to tell you the future. I don't know the future. I can read energy and sort of the direction that energy seems to be inevitably flowing towards, right? It does seem to me that there are people circulating your energy, and you perhaps are sensing this. You're sensing a shift in the area of 2-2, so 22nd of September, the area of partnerships and union. And it's as if it's necessary for every piece of yourself to be in place in order to really engage with somebody else. And what does your intuition want to tell you about this? Well, that if you had sensed a possibility, or perhaps more than one possibility, there have been people in your orbit, people around, and maybe you hadn't even been in communication with them, but you intuit this. We're looking at interpreting your intuitive messages. There are two distinct masculine energies that are making themselves known in this reading. The top energy is very feminine, but of course you don't have to be male, female. You don't have to pick if you don't want to. You can be who you are. But there are two other energies that are circulating and that perhaps are looking for almost like an opening, an energetic route to you. So that's just something to be aware of. But I can't not see this. Like, the first time these two kings showed up together in another read, I didn't necessarily even read them as two different people. But I am now. And you may or may not know, Pile 1, who these people are. But I do think you intuited, or at least you probably have a sense of it. Either way, there's something about the full moon. There are things coming your way, and I think they do have. It has to do with. Yeah, there's this necessary self-love and self-healing that has to happen, but you're just on the brink of really completing some kind of process of healing. And that's not to say that it's done forever, because often these things, and I do think this runs pretty deep for you, Pile 1, are things that you, it's a part of you, and you learn to live with things, and healing is not ever entirely complete. It's not like that, is it? It's we make progress on our journey. Our wounds are a part of us. But it is almost like you've sort of been on a certain journey, and you've been growing and healing, and you're at this brink of really getting towards this breakthrough. And it's just I do have a sense that for some of you, a lot is gonna rush in your direction at once, and you may have suddenly some unexpected options. And your intuition is sort of giving you a heads up about this, that whatever you sense about this is true. Whatever you're looking for, whatever your heart is telling you, then of course, go with your heart. But this is some very, very positive vibes, and they definitely, your intuition just wants to tell you that you're right about whatever it is that's going on down here, and to go with your heart, to go with your heart. And I think once you've perhaps moved through some of this more difficult stuff, and you are feeling more clear about where you are, you'll be able to make decisions from a much deeper place, and have the kind of trust in yourself and feeling connected to yourself like never before. I think this is going to be an amazing few weeks for you, Pile 1, an amazing time of change and positivity and renewal. So while there is fear and there is pain here, the other side is so bright, the other side of this, that there's no way around this letting go, right? And facing this Chiron energy. There's no way around it. It's work that has to be done, that's asking to be done. There's no way of avoiding it, and why would you want to? That wheel will only spin in reverse, or it will just sort of get caught there, just like going nowhere, stalling. It's in order to get to this very positive change and this lovely 4 of Wands celebratory feeling. It will require walking through a doorway and letting things go and facing some pain that has been buried. Perhaps I am. Let's just return momentarily to this awesome dog, divine service. How can you serve yourself better? This is all about taking care of yourself. This is all about healing yourself and showing up for yourself. And you are more than capable, Pile 1, of doing that, and it will bring so much. Once you're able to really get a grasp on things, like bringing all aspects of your wandering self together, you're going to be almost like this beacon of light that other people are going to be very drawn to. People like this pearl at the center of the self, that other people are really going to want to be close to you. This is a very positive reader. There's challenging stuff here and difficulties, but overall this feels so wonderful, Pile 2. If you did resonate with this, if you connected with it, then do reach out to me, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you guys, and do like, subscribe, notification bell, all of the usual stuff. I have to ask, it really does help with my channel, and I love doing this for you guys, and I hope to continue to do it for you. So yeah, it's been a pleasure, Paul 1, and I will see you in another reading. Bye, guys. Hello, Paul 2, and welcome. You picked the orange calcite. And today we are asking, what is your intuition trying to tell you? We were talking about Neptune in my Astro Ramble. I don't know if you listened to it or skipped it. If you are interested in Neptune, then I would maybe go back and have a listen. But we want to know perhaps how to interpret certain, if you've been feeling confused or unclear about what your instincts are telling you, you've been having perhaps vivid dreams, experiencing some interesting synchronicities, things like that. We want to see if we can get any information and bring you any clarity. Of course, this is general. Always exercise discernment. Always take only what feels like it's really meant for you. If it isn't, then just leave it behind. These readings are intended to give you clarity. Bring clarity to your life. I'm not here to tell you what to do with your life and what decisions to make, because you can do that yourself. But this is sort of a way of trying to, our instincts, and if you think of them as guides or your deeper or higher self, will try to bring messages to you, right, in different ways. But it's not always easy to know how to interpret those messages. Often our fears get in the way. Our logical thinking mind will sort of insert itself into the situation, and it can be just it can be hard to reach a point of clarity about it. I am using today a new deck, the rune deck, and the runes are pretty new to me. They are an old Nordic sort of paganish way of sort of communicating and sending messages, but whilst I'm very experienced with the tarot, the runes, yeah, I've been learning about them anew. So a lot of these I don't know how to exactly pronounce. They're a new part of my little repertoire here of the way I deliver messages, but I absolutely love the artist that made, this is the same artist, her name is McKay Knight, I believe. All the info will be down below. That made the Painted Tarot, which I think is one of my favorite decks to work with. But the runes are really new to me. Jera. You see, this is a lovely, I mean, let's just have a look, take a moment to just appreciate the incredible artwork here. I do think this has to do with collaboration and communication. It has to do with teamwork. It has to do with coming together with others. If you are someone that's learning a new deck, or for instance, let's say you are learning the tarot for the first time, as I've been learning these rune cards, I do recommend sort of reading your kind of the booklet or whatever comes with them, and then perhaps summarizing that and noting down your own interpretation. This is a really good way to remember things. But this card, yeah, it speaks to sort of the harvest, but it also speaks to sort of about aid and people coming together. There is a feeling that I'm getting here from this card. We're asking here about what your intuition is trying to tell you about people around you, or people in your circle, people in your orbit, and whether they ultimately do aid you and ultimately do serve you. Perhaps you've been feeling slightly at odds in a situation you're in, Pal 2. It may be a friendship group, it may be a community, it may be a co-working, collaborating scenario. Whatever it is, there's something about the people that are surrounding you, and you have questions and uncertainties about whether this is right for you, whether you are where you're supposed to be, whether you're surrounded by people that sort of match you and match your values, all of that. These questions seem to be there. I think your intuition wants to, the loud siren there, I'll just give it a minute to pass by. Your intuition, I think, is confirming that if you have a sort of inkling about this, if something is not sitting well with you, then honor that, then acknowledge that there's that feeling. If it's just like that weird feeling, that instinct, that thing in your stomach that's telling you this doesn't seem right, trust that. Like it's never without meaning, right? There's something that your body is trying to tell you. And I think when we're speaking about intuition, and when we're speaking about Neptune and interpreting all this kind of cosmic mystical stuff, one way that we can really tune into whether we're telling whether an instinct is true and authentic and everything is feeling into our body, right? What is if we have a kind of thought about something, what is the corresponding physical sensation? Sometimes we don't have to have a thought. We can just hold a person in our mind, right? And just tap in with that person's energy and see what is physically coming up for you. Your intuition is asking you to do this. And to learn to trust. There's something about things that are going on around you currently, right now, as you find yourself at this reading, and this is a timeless reading, so maybe it's a year after I've posted it, I don't know. There are energies around you, and you have some doubt about it. Your intuition, I think, wants you to tap into that, because these people are not in your world by accident. Nothing really is it? Like, nothing ever sort of shows up by accident. Everything is something that we're drawing to ourselves to learn, it's reflecting something about us. But it's almost like, I do feel, Paltus, that you're going through this process of change and evolution, and certain things that might have felt right once upon a time, they're not. But you maybe don't know how to trust those instincts, or you're unsure whether is it okay, or is it just me, or does there something seem off about this? So your intuition wants you to engage with this very question, right? It's not about whether it is or whether it isn't. It's about how you read the energy around you. And you're very capable of doing that. You're very capable of tapping into that. So this is Ewaz. I don't know how to pronounce this. Ewaz? I love these names, and oh my god, I love this. Look at this. Amazing. So this Ewaz card is sort of carries a similar energy to the Chariot. It's sort of all about the horse, so it's all about passage and movement and onward movement. I do think for some of you, for a while, you've been wanting to change direction, or you've been wanting freedom from certain circumstances, or you have been wanting to go your own way. Your intuition is bringing all of these things to your attention. It may be that you're experiencing this sense of this, just like there's a little bit of a revving engine sensation I'm getting from you, Paul, too, is that you're sort of like, shall I go? Shall I just sort of like, shall I just zoom away? There's clearly something that you're feeling uncertain about, and you're wanting to move, yes, away from certain things and towards others. But I think this card also speaks of daring and risk. It sort of carries also some sort of element of the Fool card with it from the tarot, of just like taking a leap of faith and going your own way. It may be that in the past you've allowed other people's opinions to affect you quite deeply, and perhaps you weren't someone that ever made a significant decision without sort of getting the consensus from the group, like that kind of decision making by committee. That may have been something that has actually really held you back. It's sort of, your intuition is asking you to look at this tendency to kind of outsource and need your feelings or thoughts to be validated by others. There's something that you're being asked to do right now in your life that requires just faith in yourself, and self-determination, and trust that no one knows better than you what you want and need and where you're going, but you're definitely going somewhere and have a desire to go somewhere. There's movement here. But it's like, I don't feel like there are people around you currently that are restricting you. There are people around you that you're questioning these energies, but it's also these past habits are being drawn to your attention. It's being brought to your attention, and you're being your intuition is sort of asking you to examine these things. But you're at this point now that you're ready to sort of like just to thine own self be true, essentially, that you're ready to let go of what other people think of you. There may just be something that you want to do also, that you're kind of concerned about what other people will think, but then I don't know, on the other hand, it's like this seems to be an energy that you're moving away from. You used to perhaps struggle with this more, Pile, too, but you're in a different space at the moment. I often say with these readings that when you check into it, you may be kind of ahead or behind of the curve. You may not be exactly where I'm entering this energy, but you will be there. So if it is something that you're struggling with, know that your intuition wants you to work on it. Basically work on sort of like really tuning out the noise, tuning out what other people think and do, because they cannot live your life for you, and you want your life to be yours. You want your life to be your life, pile 2. The unseen. There is a real sense of the unknown that comes through here with this card. It's like you're moving somewhere with this Awaz card. Awaz. I do like these rune cards. They are really cool. Yeah, there's something that you perhaps want to move towards, and it is hugely unknown to you, and you're having to feel your way towards it with your intuition, the ways that you would have done this in the past, which may have to do with sourcing other people's opinions, and then that making that be your signpost through things like, no, it's not working for you anymore. It's like you have to, you're being asked to take a leap here into the unknown, and there's something that you just don't know. It's like, this is a card of daring and risk, so it's like, and personal power and movement, the willingness and the strength to take those risks. It does seem to me that you find yourself at this precipice of just having to just go for something, but it's something that perhaps you have very little concrete information on, so you're having to rely entirely on your intuition. So this couldn't be more timely, I'm sure, for you. That how do you read your intuition? How can you know? Well, you know. I go back to what I was saying about the body, about sensing the body. It's a good technique, whatever it is, whether it's a person, whether it's an idea, a particular possibility. Feeling your way through your body. How does it make you feel? There's a huge element of having to navigate in the dark here with this unseen card. You're being very strongly pulled towards something, to someone, to a possibility. And I do think that those of you pile 2s, that you're very ready for this. You're very ready for this, but you're having to tune into your intuition in ways that you never have done before. It's like you've never made decisions entirely by intuition alone. In fact, in the past, you may have avoided that. In the past, you may not have done that before. Maybe you just weren't on good terms with your intuition. You didn't really understand what intuition meant, or you just didn't know how to interpret it. You've been learning, or you will be learning these things, and you start to have a different kind of relationship with your life, basically, when you learn to navigate from within, which is something I've been talking about with Neptune. Neptune sort of mists over or causes a fog in our outside reality, so that we turn our focus within and we learn to navigate from within. And that's happening to you in a big way, pile 2. Like perhaps you are experiencing some kind of significant Neptune transit, so you may have big Pisces or Virgo placements, potentially Sagittarius or Gemini too, if you didn't catch my my Neptune Astro Ramble. Horse again. You see, this is like the horse card, and we have the horse. Give yourself the space and freedom to express your creativity, free spirit. There's a lot about going it alone here, and freeing yourself and learning to rely on yourself and trusting your take. The way this horse is moving through this landscape, through all these gems that are just like sprouting, like you're learning a new way of moving through the world, and it's creating a lot of magic for you, pile 2, or it will be, if you allow the motion to happen, because it's like you're in this space where you're like, perhaps you found your horse, you know where you want to go, but it's about taking that leap of faith towards something. This horse is a free spirit. Maybe you've never done this before, like you've never just sort of like thrown caution to the wind and gone your own way. You've always sort of perhaps you're not someone that sort of would take a spontaneous trip by yourself. If that's you, you're probably not a Sagittarius. If that's you might be, but probably not. Sagittarius loves to roam. But yeah, being truly yourself, being a free spirit, it's like you're coming into this moment of time where you want to embody these ideas. You want to be free from certain things, certain circumstances, likely certain people, and your intuition is telling you that it is time, that you are ready, and that there is a lot to gain from taking this kind of new approach to things. Learning to trust that you know the way, you know the path. Just feel into yourself, connect with your intuition. Whatever methods you use to do that, you will know the way. But to let go of letting other people make decisions for you, let go of letting the world outside make these decisions for you, and make your own reality through this kind of inner work. We have the new moon. So the new moon in Virgo will be coming up early September. September 7th, I think, or September 9th. I'm not a big numbers person, so when I talk about dates, like, you have to bear with me. I'm much more I'm not a number person, but the new moon. So yeah, the new moon in Virgo may be a very significant moment for you. Of course, when we have the new moon, the new moon is no moon, right? It's where we can't see the moon. The moon has its back to us. But it's blacked out. There's this darkness. When the full moon brings illumination. Oops, my battery. The full moon brings illumination. The new moon sort of it's like the slate is wiped over, right? And then we start again. But the way it's blacked out, it's like, again, learning to navigate from within. Knowing that sometimes you have to move forward without seeing where it is that you're moving towards. There's a road that you're taking. Your horse is taking you somewhere, Paltu, but it seems like you can't see the road. The usual signposts that you would have relied on, they're not there. And it may be that there's just a risk to be taken, and it's hard for you to get any information and clarity on it at the moment. So you're just having to go within. The new moon in Virgo, which is very soon, a week or so, I will most likely I will post this video before that new moon, but that this is it will be significant for you in terms of taking this chance. So I do want you to, Pal 2, if you're resonating with this, I would definitely mark the new moon. For Pal 1, it was the full moon. For you guys, no, it's the new moon. There's something happening before that. Make a ritual of it, note it. There's a significant energy shift for you, I think, that will be happening around the time of the new moon in Virgo, although this is a timeless read. So whenever you're watching this video, take note of the coming new moon, whatever that is, wherever that is. So we have the 9 of Swords here in the tarot, we have the 4 of Pentacles, we have the 2 of Swords, and we have Judgment. In the Moonchild deck, the 9 of Swords. Interesting. Pile 2, apologies for that jump. I did have a technical failure. My phone has not been cooperating with me lately, but I always find if there's some kind of issue or technical issue, that there's something within the read, I think, that needs a little pause. So yeah, I'm coming back to this an hour or so later. So I've had some time to sort of sit with my instincts about this read. Before we get on to we were on the 9 of Swords, but before, I want to go back to this new moon card, because there's something here. There's these kind of moth-like butterfly creatures on this new moon that are sort of rising with this new moon, and I do think that speaks to you, Paltu. It speaks to where you currently are in your life. I don't think that these issues that you're facing, that of sort of freeing yourself, your spirit, going your own way, learning to navigate from within, I don't think these things have popped up overnight. I think there's been quite a deep and quite long process of transformation here. Feeling something similar that I felt in Pole 1 was that it's like now you've reached, it's almost like there's a kind of breakthrough moment that's happening for you where you're really ready to fly. Like with these moths, it's like there has been this chrysalis moment, and it may have lasted a long time for you. And you may not have perceived it that way, you may have just perceived it as life, right? But you're entering into an entirely new phase, and I do think it's very significant. what's happening to you right now, Paltu. Yeah, so to the Nine of Swords, that's where we were when I was very rudely cut off by my phone. I would say this Nine of Swords in the Moonchild deck I love, because the Nine of Swords is not a happy card, but there's something about this depiction, because she seems, you know, the Nine of Swords is a card of fear, of anxiety, of overthinking, of being caught in our worries, right? But I love this depiction because of the way she's sort of aware, like all of these swords are like facing right to her head, and yet there's something tranquil about her. She's sort of at ease with that, and it's almost as if she's learned this way to not take the sharpness of her fears and her worries so seriously, because our thoughts, you know, we shouldn't always take our thoughts so seriously. Our thoughts are there, they will be running around in our mind regardless, but like learning to think of our thoughts, learning to sort of consider our thoughts to be, every thought we have is like an invitation, right? It appears, we can choose to follow it. Oh my god, sorry. Another little... What the hell? Okay, what was I saying? Sorry, Paltu. That was unplanned. Another unplanned interruption. I mean, I could try and interpret this in a spiritual sense and say perhaps you feel like every time you're trying to get somewhere, there's some kind of intervention. I don't know. But I was saying that a thought, you know, a thought is just a thought. It's an invitation for you to follow it. Thoughts lead to further thoughts of a similar nature, right? So we can observe our more negative and more fear-based thoughts and just let them come and go. We can dismiss them and say, yeah, no thanks, like, I'm not going to work with you, not going to follow you. And then we can choose which kind of thoughts we want to spend time with, right? That we want to give sort of space in our mind. We can look at it that way. I know it's not easy, and it's not like I'm thinking only lovely, pleasant things all the time. No, this is a struggle for all of us, and it's not something that you can master overnight, right? But there's something about this Nine of Swords, and at least in relation to, because this character is holding this moon too, and I perceive this moon as just something. There's this emotional development that's been happening, and it's connected with something that you want to move towards, which is unknown, unseen, right? So in this dark space that you're trying to make your way through, like she's in a woods, like a woods here. And we were sort of talking about this, like you're trying to you're moving through the world in a different way, and you found yourself wanting to take a particular path, but it's like there's no signposts, it's dark, you don't really know where you're going, but you're following something, this kind of emotional truth, an intuitive truth, and it's just learning how to move through these things and get on different terms with your fears, basically, not letting them drive you. Perhaps you've also struggled with that, Paltu, is allowing your fears to dictate your movements, and you don't want that anymore. I think you've come to some kind of awareness of that, or you will be. So while you perhaps cannot eradicate them, especially if there is something genuinely daunting and about whatever it is that you are embarking on, then fear is only natural. But it doesn't mean you have to let these fears block you or dictate how you move forward. This Four of Pentacles cards is very interesting because if you look at it closely, it's her own hands that are around her neck. But I didn't see it that way when I first saw this card. I really just saw it as sort of just some kind of restriction around her neck, as if she or he was just sort of just caught. What am I feeling here about this card? I'm feeling a sort of sense of surrender here. And it's about surrendering to losses too. The Four of Pentacles in general is a card that speaks to holding on too tight to things and fear of loss, particularly in material terms. There is something to be lost, or something you have lost, or when you're taking this risk and this daring, it does mean leaving things behind. There may be, for instance, if some of these questions you had about people had to do with work or money or things like that, you're refocusing, and reconsidering what you value. Values are a big thing for you right now. You may feel like you're having to make a choice between sort of risking some kind of security, financial security, that's part of this risk, to just go your own way, to be this kind of free spirit. Your intuition, I think, is telling you to relax into this sense of surrender and risk, that everything will be okay if you trust yourself and if you honor your deeper needs. It's not an either or thing. You will figure out a way to make your life work, even if it means leaving things behind. But there's actually quite a harmonious, and also I think that you may have had certain successes, or earned quite a bit or something, had some kind of material gain, but it didn't bring freedom. In fact, it brought the opposite. It brought a sense of restriction. It brought a sense of being beholden to things, to people, to circumstances. It never brought the freedom that you thought it would, and now you're seeking a different kind of freedom. That's really interesting, and that's a beautiful, yeah. Two of Swords here. Yeah, this Two of Swords is interesting to me. The depiction in that, the Two of Swords is another card of blockage, like the Four of Pentacles, in a different way, right? But usually on the Two of Swords, we see that the person in the card is blocked by the swords. They are holding the swords up and restricting flow by sort of hiding behind the swords. In this particular depiction, the two swords are beside her. On either side of her, they are not blocking her movement. So the Two of Swords can be a card about struggling or refusing to make a choice, therefore creating stagnation. You have made a choice that has to do with moving towards something and away from other things. We're clear on that, pile too. But there's still so much, uncertainty, the unseen in this, and I'm just very drawn to this sort of there's a sense of this could go either way, or this risk that you could win or you could lose. And you're trying to find peace with that. You're trying to find peace with a lot, I think, as you are moving forward. And I think, again, your intuition wants to bring you back to your inner sense of truth, your own truth, of making your own decisions. And even if things don't end up, the outcome isn't what you wanted, it doesn't mean that the attempt was wrong or that you made the wrong choice. It's sort of standing beside your own decisions, your own errors, your own mistakes, and finding peace with it. Your intuition, just above all, not so much with this pile about what your intuition wants to tell you, only that your intuition wants to engage with you, that it's about building this relationship with your intuition. And we don't always get it right. Sometimes we think it's our intuition telling us something, but it's actually our fears that are dressing themselves up as our intuition. And there are ways, I think, that we learn to discriminate. That's not easy. Like it's a challenge for all of us that sort of have a lot of intuitive information. I've spoken on this in other videos, but for you, it's a matter of just starting that conversation. And there's just something about standing behind, or standing there and owning your own truth and beliefs and everything. Your decisions, making your decisions, whatever the outcome, they're yours. They're yours. no one else's. Yeah. So the Judgment card here, yeah, there's a real sense of reckoning as you sort of are moving towards the new moon and perhaps taking a leap of faith towards something. There's this real, the Judgment is a card of reckoning. I'm drawn to this arch here and just these feathers. What's going on here with these feathers? There's somewhere you want to go, and it may be a physical place, or that physical place may represent a more emotional or spiritual thing. But it's like there's this arch and there's this doorway, there's this moon looming behind it, right? I do sense, Pile 2, that you really want a significant shift in life. That this thing, that this risk, it isn't trivial. It isn't a minor thing. It's a significant life change. It would change everything in your life. You may have deliberated on this, or you may have hesitated, but now you, I think, have moved past those things and you're ready to take a leap. You really want your life to look different, to kind of walk through this doorway into this other place, but you don't know whether you don't know how it's going to look when you get there. You don't know if there is there. You don't know whether you're going to get to this doorway and you're going to be somewhere else entirely. But I think that you know that you want and need change, and that this change has been brewing for a while, and that it's a very natural process of transformation. Your intuition, I think, just wants you to know that all of this has been about you reconnecting to yourself and reconnecting to, when we're talking about intuition, I suppose we are talking about that connection we have to our higher self, to the divine. That's what this has come around to. This is what this metamorphosis and this transformation, that's what it's all been about. It's not about the outcome of actually having or getting things or whatever it is that you sort of want your life to look like, Pile 2, which isn't to say at all that I'm not talking about outcomes here. I'm not talking about, because what it is you want will be different for each, but it's just this, then it's been about, the transformation has been about connecting to spirit, intuition, whatever you want to call it, to the divine. And it doesn't matter what happens next, so long as you maintain that connection. So yeah, and sort of, free the spirit within, free spirit. I love this card. Look at this. Be like the horse, Pile 2. Free and galloping through the gems. I think that's lovely. Pile 2, I apologize again about the weird disruptions. The phone, things falling. Sorry about that, but I hope this message was clear, and I hope it was meaningful to some of you and resonated. If it was, I'd love to hear from you in the comments, and do like, subscribe, and all the usual things that help build the channel, because it is a pleasure for me to do this for you, and I look forward to reading for you again soon. Bye, Pile 2. Hello, Pile 3, and welcome to your reading. You picked the Amazonite. Today we are asking all about your intuition. We want to know what your intuition is trying to tell you. Maybe you experienced some interesting signs and synchronicities, or maybe you have had like an inkling about something, but you don't know whether to trust that. Maybe you've had some interesting dreams, but you don't know how to interpret them. We want to dig for information about that. We are hoping for some clarity. Of course, these are very general readings. Always exercise discernment when it comes to group readings like this. You'll know if a message is for you. If not, then it was for someone else. Take only what feels like it's really meant for you. I'm using a new rune deck, Pile 3, for this read, which I haven't worked with the runes before. If you don't know, the runes are like an ancient way of sort of communicating amongst sort of the sort of pagan medieval Europeans. Like, if you know anything about Nordic mythology, you may know a little bit about the runes, but for me this is very new. Like, I have been reading the tarot for many years, and It's just the meanings of the tarot are kind of second nature to me at this point. But the rune meanings are very new, so bear with me as I figure... actually, just a second. Sorry, I had to grab something there. If you are someone that is learning the tarot from scratch, and you've just bought a new deck, I do recommend sort of writing down each card and perhaps studying from your booklet, but then writing down your own interpretation. I do think writing things down and keeping a notebook like that is a really helpful way to learn if you are new to these things. But I'm curious, Paul 3, let's see which of these runes you got. Oh, you see, I don't know how to pronounce them. Righto, and Algis. Interesting. Oh, I love this. And I do love this deck, which is made by an artist, Sophie McKay Knight. I believe that you can get her stuff on Etsy. All of the info will be down below in the description box, but I really love her artwork. I think it's amazing. Radho. I have to read up a little on this card, but what's coming through to me here is a real feeling of being at odds with someone in your environment. But I want to have a just look at this Radho. Yeah, this card is... This particular rune speaks to communication and finding your voice, but I am feeling like perhaps some of you have been in a sort of situation of conflict of some kind, perhaps with a specific person. For some of you it could be an inner conflict. There's something that you want to speak on and you've been holding back. But there is a sort of tension that's coming from this card for me. There's a sense of there being a conflict surrounding you. But it may be that you are struggling, or maybe something that you suspect or fear. There's just some kind of real tension. But this Algis card, this is, look at these antlers here. This is all about strength, right? It is kind of like a warrior card, the Algis. Let me have a little look. Where did I write down this? My interpretation. Yeah, there's protection, strength, protection, passion. It's a very passionate card. Some of you may be in a situation that is very sort of high passion, but quite dramatic and quite tense. It doesn't have to be a romantic situation, but either way, your intuition is really calling to you about this. You may have felt sort of uncertain about this for a while, Pal 3. You may be experiencing a lot of fear and not knowing whether your fear is your instinct or whether it's just paranoia, whether you're just playing tricks on yourself. You may feel quite alone right now, Pal 3, in terms of dealing with circumstances in your life. You may feel a little bit unsupported. You may feel as if you're the one that sort of always has to sort of take care of things. You know, you have to constantly be tapping into your inner strength and having to be a fighter, but you're tired, and I think your fears often seem to run wild around you. You don't know how to engage with them. This is very interesting. The kiss. I mean, this is a very romantic archetype, of course, and it does often speak to romantic relationships. So it may be that this is speaking to a relationship in particular for you, Pal 3, and it has to do with trust and doubt and not knowing somebody else's motivations, or just not knowing whether something is right. There's a real defensiveness that I'm getting here from this card. Not knowing whether somebody is on your side, feeling like you can't communicate clearly, but there's a connection here that has very deep roots and is very long-standing. This may be new for you, Pile 3, that you have felt at odds with this situation, whatever it is for you. It's like there's just an overall sense of something not being right, as if something is hidden from you, but you just don't know what it is. And again, it's like you don't know whether this is your intuition or whether it's just your fear. But your intuition does want you to trust yourself on this, Pile 3. Your intuition does want you to know that this isn't nothing. It does seem to be about an intimate connection or bond. But yeah, something is in the dark. Perhaps you fear that you are being lied to about something. Perhaps you fear that somebody is deceiving you, or someone is just not saying what they're thinking. It's filling you with quite a lot of anxiety. And that anxiety is sort of, if you imagine it like a radio, right? It's like the anxiety is incredibly loud, and it's hard for you to hear those softer sounds, those softer intuitive sounds underneath your anxiety, Pile 3, because it just seems so chaotic. Let's have a look here at your animal totem. We have success. The field mouse. Believe in yourself and dare to dream big. That's lovely. Success. It may be that things have been going well in your life, Pile 3, or that they will be, because, you know, there's an arc here, and perhaps you're ahead or perhaps you're behind of this particular narrative, right? It's like you want peace and you want harmony and you want to enjoy certain successes. You may feel like there are people around you that are working against you, or perhaps there's envy. Perhaps your success is attracting envy. And again, there's this sense of conspiratorial or anxious thought about, you just don't know what's real or what's not, but there's an overall sense of something being hidden. Your intuition does want you to engage with that, but also at the same time that it's like acknowledging that you may have a very storytelling brain, Pile 3, that will create these narratives around situations. You may have a small amount of information and you'll build a whole scenario around it. I mean, it's what we do, but you may do that quite frequently and quite intensely. That you may have always been this way. You may have been this way when you're a child. I don't know. There's something. Is this sense of telling truth from fiction, and there's some kind of expectation of betrayal. And this may be unconscious for some of you, Pile 3. For some of you, you may be aware of this tendency to think or fear things have been hidden. In some cases, it may be that this is the response to past experiences when perhaps you have felt betrayed, or you have felt lied to, or you just felt as if things were going on behind your back. For others, there may be deeper unconscious roots to this that have to do with similar things. So the unspoken, things being concealed, people being motivated by things that you can't see. Maybe you are aware of this. Maybe you are aware that there's something deeper at play here in terms of your perception. Maybe some of you aren't, but this is what your intuition is trying to convey, is trying to get you to look at certain patterns rather than the particular circumstances that you're in. But patterns of, you know, this is a card of communication. It may be that you're not communicating clearly. It may be that someone else isn't. But there's, it's like there's all these concealed meanings to the things people say. Or you're reading between the lines and you don't know whether you're doing it accurately. And I am feeling like sometimes, Pile 3, you are seeing things that aren't there, but your intuition is drawing your attention to a certain kind of pattern of behavior, if that makes sense. We have the full moon, and we've just passed a full moon in Aquarius. The next full moon will be in Pisces, and Neptune is currently in Pisces. I don't think that the full moon will be conjunct Pisces, Neptune, but Neptune, of course, does speak to imagination and the unseen and uncertainty and this lack of clarity. If there are things around you that you just don't know what to make of them, or you don't know how to interpret them, and it does definitely feel as if it has to do with other people, things that other people are doing, things that are being said or unsaid, or interpretations of people's words, this fear of things going on behind your back, all of that. Yeah, I'm repeating myself here, but your intuition is calling you it's not about whether you're receiving accurate information about threats. It's about the patterns of trust, of trusting others, of feeling secure, of in some cases there may be some kind of root, early life root here, that has to do with things really being concealed. So if there was something in your environment growing up where that there was just a lot of mystery, or there were things that were hidden, you know, these are things that I think your intuition is calling you to face. I'm drawn here to these little flames. Are there flames? No, there's not, but I was thinking that there were, and it was making me think of sort of creating a little, if you can, at the full moon in Pisces in September, if you can, which is the 22nd, I believe, because there was also, the full moon was also significant to Pile 1, making perhaps a little fire in a safe and responsible way, you know, outside is best, and sort of writing down some of the things you would like to let go of, writing down intentions for the month or maybe even the year ahead. Make this a significant moon for you. I am sensing that for some of you that have put this pile, you are engaging in sort of narratives that maybe aren't based in reality. Of course, I don't know, because it will have different. I think that certain fears that you have. Some of you also, there may be circumstances that you feel you've been caught in a loop on. So in a circumstance where this very much has to do with a romantic connection, for instance, if you fear betrayal, or you fear your partner being unfaithful, or things like that, and of course this can become a self-fulfilling prophecy if we are untrusting. And you maybe don't know if what you're feeling, these naggings, are just your intuition warning you, or they are alarm bells that are alerting you to old patterns of thinking. So I cannot speak to your personal situation, Pile 3, but I do think that, you know, the latter is most likely true for you, Pile 3s. That's, I can't rule. I don't know what's going on in your particular circumstance, but I do think that the fear, the questions, the mystery is rooted in situations other than the situation you're in, right? It's really a delay, it's a response. It's like if we don't work through pain or betrayal or hurt the first time it happens, it's almost as if we subconsciously conjure similar situations in which we can, right? Experiences then just become echoes of past experiences, so we don't know if what we're feeling in the moment is what we're feeling in the moment, or it is a delayed response to something felt in the past. Your intuition is really calling you, Pile 3, to consider these things. Let's have a look at the tarot. We have the Ten of Swords, so this is it's a challenging card. The Magician, the Three of Pentacles, the Six of Wands. So these are nicer cards. Never know what's going to show up. The Ten of Swords, yeah. I mean, right off the bat, I do feel, Paul, through that there is some unhealed trauma or pain, and it may well have to do with either betrayal, or it has to do with mystery and concealed information, people withholding things from you, or secrets that may have been part of your environment growing up, but you may have also had experiences perhaps in intimate relationships and perhaps in friendships, just in different kinds of relationships where you felt betrayed, or you felt deceived, you felt like people went behind your back. Whatever the root is of this issue, this idea of self-fulfilling prophecies, when we have this expectation of betrayal, it's necessary to rewind. This is so often the case, and there was something about this too in Pole 1, if you were connecting to that pile, but you are being drawn to address past pain so that it doesn't cause disruption, so that you don't get stuck in this loop of sort of mistaking the present for the past, because that's what I feel is happening. Again, obviously there's a present situation that is a trigger, and I can't really speak to that because I don't think it's the point. There is something that I think perhaps you've struggled to really face and to work through, and again, because perhaps it is surrounded by mystery, it's very Neptunian, and this is what this video was all about. It's typical of Neptune to sort of like cast a veil over things, so it's hard for us to really define things or see the clear outlines of circumstances, and that may be something that has reoccurred in your life. It may be something that you just don't know what's real at times, and I do think this has deep roots. There is, we had this card of success, and the Magician is also a very powerful creator. Where the Magician shows up, we know that you currently have a lot of tools at your disposal and skill in using those tools to create what you want. There was the sort of, for some of you here, this sense of fearing that your success or achievements will be undermined or something, or people working against you. Know that you can... Look, there's always going to be people out there that are irritating or envious, or they can't be happy for other people. There are ways of sort of connecting and protecting your energy from that kind of thing. However, I'm not feeling that that's maybe a big issue here for you, Pile 3. I do think it's really a matter of your perception and your expectations. But I think if you could redirect some of your focus to your own creativity and to your own ideas and whatever it is that is your current life focus, there may be a relationship here too that is also, a focal point for you right now. But it does seem like some of this energy or these old patterns are interfering in different areas of your life, and perhaps casting a veil or a mist over things, and it can be a struggle for you to see clearly. It may at times be a struggle for you to see yourself clearly and your capabilities. So if you fear that people are working against you, potentially in the professional sphere, that of course can be rooted in certain ideas you have about your own worth. All of that, your intuition just really wants you to examine the root of your fear and paranoia, and whether is it really about what's happening, or is it about something else? Because you may have spent a lot of time thinking, is there really some kind of threat? Am I just seeing what I want to see? Am I being paranoid? Is there some kind of conspiracy against me? It's like, it's like the wrong question to ask. You're having a response, you're having a reaction. It's causing tension, or it's causing suffering. It's about looking at that reaction rather than the trigger, right? The trigger is just the trigger. So you may be examining the trigger and thinking, is it really? What is it really? But the trigger is alerting you to the wound, right? we have the Three of Pentacles, which does speak of teamwork. And I was feeling in some cases, yeah, there's a sort of perhaps tension around you that has to do with work life, right? The Three of Pentacles. There's a desire for harmony, and this card often is sort of perhaps collaboration and work harmony, right? Pile 3, you're all different people, right? So I can't speak to every one of your situation, but this card is sort of telling me that there sort of is harmony, or there is the potential for harmony, and yeah, that there's some kind of suspicion here, and it may not be at all. This is tricky. This is tricky for me to navigate, because overall it's like your intuition is trying to draw your attention to your tendency to think these things. So I cannot speak on what is really, whether there are things that are going around, because it's like, seems like it's not the point. And I hope that makes sense. It's like there's these, with the Magician and the Three of Pentacles, they're all really, really productive and wonderful cards that speak of progress and development and just making things and succeeding and creating magic, right? But it's as if these things are under threat by a certain kind of inner state that you've found yourself stuck in, pile 3, that has to do with feeling mistrustful or feeling fearful. The Six of Wands is also a card of success. It's the victory card. It's about being celebrated, being seen and applauded. It's as if you... This is also about success. Whether things are really going well and you are having successes here, or there's just the potential for it that is blocked, because the person on this card is sort of looking blankly, in another direction, where the Six of Wands, like, there's all of this stuff behind her that's blooming and, developing and reaching these heights. It's like there's a danger here of things passing you by, or not recognizing the good in things because of this expectation of loss, of betrayal, fears, and all of that. There is a real need, I think, that one thing your intuition is trying to draw your attention to is how much you have going for you, or how much potential you have to create what you want and have so much success, and there's so much positivity here in these cards, but there's this impression that you're not able to see these things clearly because of old patterns, and because perhaps you fear that they're not real, that the rug will come out from under you, or that you're suspicious that if something goes right, then it's not going to go right for long. All of these things. Your intuition wants you to look at these things, and because there's a risk that if they're unexamined, that they can create blockages or things happening you just don't recognize the positives in your life, because you're always thinking that there's some kind of catch to it. If you haven't experienced some kind of success lately, then know that there is all this potential for that. If you're able to I think go within here and just actually really kind of sort of penetrate and understand the root of these issues. And I think there is a clear root here, but it may have not been something that you've wanted to look at, pile 3. There may have been fear surrounding it, but you don't want it to block your happiness here. There's positive cards here about teamwork, about success, but also this is a very romantic card that speaks to intimate bonds, right? It's like there's so much going for you here. But to return to this first card, Wright, I'm not quite sure how to say that. It does speak to communication. It is about the voice, about using the voice, and I think one thing that might help right now is communicating very clearly, potentially sharing your fears. If you fear there's some kind of mystery or things concealed from you, to actually be quite direct and ask questions, because then they have less space to fester. Don't keep all these fears to yourself, although of course there's a way of going about things without accusing people of things that maybe they haven't, that aren't based in reality, but just sharing your fears. I think that would be a really good way to connect and sort of admit that, you know, you do have a tendency to sort of fear that there's a catch to things, and just being very open about some of the things that you've been going through. I think that would really help Pile 3 in navigating whatever it is that you've been going through. I hope that this provided some kind of illumination, because there just seems to be quite a lot of fog. It's very Neptunian read. Maybe some of you are in the thick of quite a heavy Neptune transit or something like that, which could very much be the case if you have, you know, a sun or a moon or just a significant placement in a mutable sign. Yeah, do let me know if this resonated. Leave me a comment below, like, subscribe, and all the usual. Yeah, I hope this was a helpful reading, and I do hope to read for you again soon. Pile 3, bye. Pile 4, welcome. Welcome to your read. Thank you so much for joining me. You picked the Lapis Lazuli, and today we are asking, what is your intuition trying to tell you? If you felt a bit unclear, if you feel like you've been receiving some kind of intuitive messages, but you don't know how to interpret them, maybe signs, synchronicities, maybe you've had sort of vivid dreams or something like that, we're going to see if we can gain any clarity. Of course, this is a collective read. Always exercise discernment when it comes to these collective reads. Take only what feels like it's meant for you. Leave what doesn't. Yeah. You always know what's going on with you, Pile 4, so take these things with a grain of salt. My intention here is to help provide clarity for you to feel seen, to know that you're not alone, because a lot of us are in the same boat. That's why these collective reads, I think, are meaningful, because we can see how many people are really going through some very similar things. I am today using a new deck of the runes. So I don't know if you guys know much about the runes. They were like an ancient communication kind of oracle technique by the in the sort of pagan medieval times. If you know anything about Nordic mythology, you may have already heard of the runes, but this is the first time I'm using this, and I'm really very new to the whole concept of runes, so you'll have to bear with me. I don't really know how to pronounce all of the things. I'm very fluent in tarot. I've been reading tarot for, I think, over 10 years, but the runes are something that's new to me, but I'm excited to incorporate them into these readings. So Pile 4, let's have a look at what you have here. We have Thurisaz, and Hagalaz. Okay, curious. There's a great feeling that I'm getting from this Thurisaz card. Can you guys see that? This so the deck is called The Painted Rune, and it's by Sophie McKay Knight, I think. All the info will be down below. I have used her painted tarot deck on my channel, and I think it's wonderful. What am I feeling here? Let me just have a look at my notes. I think if you're learning a new deck, if you've got a tarot deck and you're new to tarot, I think going by the book and reading your book and then perhaps writing down your own interpretation as you learn is really helpful. But this Thurisaz card is all about sort of liminal states and sort of reaching a point of new perspective or in-between states, sort of like similar to the Hanged Man or perhaps even the High Priestess, in that it speaks to sort of almost having your foot in more than one world. You, Pile 4, perhaps more than my other piles today, maybe have a very, very developed intuition. Like perhaps you have been for a long time engaging and learning to interpret signs and signals and synchronicities and all of that, that you're actually quite skilled at it. You've kind of devoted yourself to learning how to read sort of the landscape of your life from this very deep place. It doesn't mean that you're always clear exactly on what to do next, on, you know, particularly if perhaps something comes up in your life that is particularly difficult. sometimes our intuition is clearer than other times. It's sort of like tuning into a music, like in a radio dial, right? Something like that. Either way, they have this sense that you're sort of very committed to that pole 4. But you have been struggling lately. There may have been something that has sort of slightly knocked you off or disconnected you from your intuitive responses to things. Let's have a look at this Hagalaz card, because yeah, so this card represents sort of an unexpected obstacle, right? A challenge, something chaotic, and it is a chaotic card. It's like something has just been like, you may have been kind of at peace, you may have been moving along with feeling, yes, in tune with your intuition and in tune with your life and with yourself, but there's like, then something has been sort of thrown into your world and has brought things into question. I think quite likely it may, it has to do with relationships, it has to do with connections, it may also in some cases have to do with your past, something that has re-emerged from the past, or perhaps something that you've learned, and it's thrown you off. It's almost like it's kind of put a muffler over your intuitive antenna. You might feel quite uncertain and you're trying to find a sense of stability amidst this chaos, like something has really thrown you for a loop here. I want to have a look at the archetype card here, the crone. Interesting, because of course this is a very sort of, I love the crow, crow is sort of totem, I think is very interesting, but for me, I relate it to the supernatural and supernatural knowledge and things like that. And the crone is, yeah, kind of a wise old creature. I don't know why, but I really feel that this has something to do with sort of something hidden coming to light that has to do with your history, pile 4. And for some of you, it may be that this hasn't come to light, but you intuit it. But there may be a lot of chaos or fear around that intuition, and that may be the question that you've come here to this reading with, is for some kind of clarification of, you suspect something, or you're receiving some interesting omens or information, perhaps it's in your dreams, and it's thrown you for a loop. Yeah, I do think it has to do, for some of you it could be about the family. But it's calling things into question. And I think perhaps you have been trying to meditate on this pile 4, but it's, I'm going to have to get some more information here, because this is difficult to read. Here we have Rabbit, sensitive soul, strengthen your boundaries and cut cords. Okay. As I said, this is a card about liminal space, it's about perspective, it's about transitional phases, and often between sort of the mundane and the divine, right? It's having one foot in somewhere, the other somewhere else. For some of you, it's almost as if you have been on a kind of a spiritual path and you have been developing in some ways, in some deep ways over time, but it's changed your perspective on a lot of things in your life and a lot of things in your history, and some of these may have to do with family relationships, long-standing relationships, even if it isn't sort of blood family, and there's things that aren't fitting in your life anymore. There are things, this is similar to pile 2, there are things that just don't resonate with you anymore, people that don't resonate with you, people's behavior, their values, all of that. Sensitive soul, strengthen your boundaries and cut cords. Yeah, you may feel like there's this disruptive energy around you and you have to protect yourself from it. You may have questions about whether you should set some serious boundaries, that yes, and full on cut cords. It's a sensitive soul. Yes, you perhaps, pile 4, see things that other people don't, or you also are able to see through things. I do think pile 4s, you are like very, very intuitive, have a very, very sharp insight. So it's almost as if you can see through surfaces. You can read the meanings of the things people say around you. It does seem that there are specific people around you that are just, they're creating chaos, or there's just chaos around them. For some, yes, family members, but it's just like you're seeing things about them. In some cases, perhaps, yes, you've been on a spiritual sort of journey, you've been healing yourself, but other people are not. It's like you've been doing this work on yourself, and you've been looking at yourself and life in a new light, but it's hard for you now to look at people around you and not judge. Not that, because I don't think you are judgmental. It's more like you're aware of almost certain people being trapped in kind of a different mindset, or a mindset that you've moved on from. You've evolved a lot, I think, perhaps in a short space of time, pile 4, and sorry, sort of siren. You are just, yeah, you're just not vibing with certain things and certain attitudes. It definitely has to do with also values and discrimination and knowing what you will and will not tolerate or put up with. There's a sense also of needing to protect your energy from people, and you just don't know how to. Perhaps because these people are so close to you, and you don't know whether it's the right thing to. There's a part of you, I think perhaps you are very nurturing, you are a sensitive soul, and you can understand, pile 4, where people are coming from when they're acting out, or they're not acting well, when they're just engaging in certain behaviors. But there's frustration about other people around you perhaps not doing these that it works. It's like they can't see their own motivations. They're acting out of these kind of sort of negative patterns and unconscious behaviors, like they won't do their healing work. And I think you are a very nurturing person, pile 4, and it's almost like you want to help others, you want to, but if they don't help themselves, like how much of yourself can you give without, while still protecting your own energy? We have Mars here, which, I mean, off the bat here, we're sensing that there's with this energy, Hagalaz, it was as if some kind of like bolt, or like something was thrown into your life that disrupted your development or your peace. Like maybe you haven't been feeling at peace, but you've been going through an amazing transition, and it may have been over the past couple of years. You've been seeing life through a different lens, but now you can't not but see everything through a different lens, and things are not, there are certain things that just do not look right, they're not sitting well with you. But it's like there's only so much you can control other people, and I don't think you are this sort of self-righteous, sanctimonious type that wants to go around telling other people how to be, but you also just don't know how to engage with these energies anymore. They just seem chaotic and disruptive, and Mars is a disruptive planet. Mars is wonderful when we're in charge of our Mars and we're working with our Mars, but when Mars is sort of, when for instance we have a poorly integrated Mars in our chart, we can be very combative, we can be unnecessarily aggressive, we can be competitive, we can create drama, we can create strife, we can just, this is the warrior planet, it can be very warlike, and there are certain circumstances, pile 4, around you that perhaps feel that way. They feel like being in some kind of psychic war zone, and you don't know how to protect yourself from this. Maybe some people are coming at you, trying to pick fights with you, trying to be aggressive, and you don't know how to maintain your peace of mind, your tranquility in the face of this, but you don't know where and how you can cut cords. Yeah, this is challenging. Let's look at the tarot here. Yeah, so I mean, we have some lovely cards here. We have the 6 of Cups and we have the 10 of Cups sort of over here, like on your side, right? You're motivated right now, pile 4, by creating peace around you and also sort of achieving your optimal state of happiness and joy and fulfillment. And that seems real to you, perhaps in a new way, in ways that it hasn't in the past. I think you have overcome a lot and you have healed a lot. You've been on this journey, and there's a determination to move past things. I do sense that a lot of these struggles that you're facing and intuitions around, if it's family or it's long-standing relationships, they are very deep-rooted. Overall there's just this sense of whether you should let go of certain things and people that you have a very long history with. And I'm not sure necessarily it's about my confirming or denying whether intuitions are real. We wanted clarity here on what your intuition is trying to tell you, but the sense I'm getting is that overall you have this very deep and engaged relationship with your intuition, but there's this chaos lately that seems to have disrupted that, and you don't know how. This is dear to you. It's like you've been in this space of development and growth, and there's so much effort and care, and you have to protect this from certain influences. But do you cut cords? I think you would certainly like to achieve a sense of peace and happiness all around. But this is aggressive energy that I feel like you're trying to navigate. For some of you, I think perhaps you've been thinking of traveling or going somewhere, or there's a sort of pilgrimage style something. There's a journey you want to take, a physical journey, and you perhaps feel a little held back by feeling beholden to others or feeling like you have to take care of others. There's an entanglement with some just real difficult energies that are preventing you from feeling entirely free, or as if you could pursue your happiness, or that even if you could, they would be always sort of ready to disrupt that happiness. On this Eight of Swords card, we have this, usually the Eight of Swords is pretty trapped by something, usually their own, it's a self-entrapment, but I love this deck in the way that there's just these unexpected depictions here, but they add so much kind of nuance to the read. But the way she's veiled, it made me, because I was saying there's something about sort of, the veil, or there's this liminal space of this Thurasaz card. Self-protection and creating this space where you can truly be yourself. You may feel like you can't talk to everyone around you about things that you're going through, particularly perhaps this very vivid intuition and perhaps even psychic development you've experienced. Your intuition may be very, very heightened. And that may be something you feel like you have to protect from people that perhaps have a different take on life, but also you really want to protect your experiences. You may feel like the only way to do that is to be alone, or at least to separate yourself from certain energies. This is, I think, very, very hard, though. That's challenging. But it does seem that if you haven't been spending a lot of time alone, then there is a sort of need for solitude, or at least to create more serious boundaries with people. That may be something that you've struggled with, but that there is this necessity for a more protective veil around you so that you can maintain some of the peace that you've been able to achieve. We have the Fool here. The Fool on this card is like stumbling. Or at least I always see it that way. Maybe that isn't what it is supposed to be, but that's how I always see the Fool on this card, that rather than sort of leaping, it's like a stumble. It's like there's a risk or a leap of faith that has to happen to move into a new stage of life, but the character is reluctant to make that change. And the butterflies around this person speak of transformation and just this reluctance to go all in with something, I suppose. Or it's almost as if perhaps you're becoming someone, Pile 4, that is quite different to the people that you have known and have been around you. And although the transformation you have been going through is very deep, very meaningful, feels like it's your true path, that you found your calling or your purpose, or you're on the way there, it's also created this division because you're stepping further and further away from the person that you were and other people's perceptions of you, and perhaps they are reluctant to let this growth happen. They can see and feel as you evolve that you're evolving away from them, and they're not evolving in the same ways. So there's, even though this these experiences you're having are very meaningful and you're very protective of them, there's also this thing happening with this Fool of leaping into the unknown, but there's this stumble or reluctance because you're thinking, does this mean a cutting of cords? How high and how thick do my boundaries have to be for me to protect my life and myself? How much do I have to let go in order to grow? I'm not going to really speak on what your intuition is telling you here about these things, because I think that you don't need me to. I think that you are already just like very highly developed in this way, and it's not about the inability to read signs and signals and interpret them. That's not really the issue here, it seems to me. It's about being willing to be who you really are, regardless of what other people say or think. Or there's some difficult choices I feel like you're facing, and it's almost as if you sort of have no choice but to perhaps go it alone, or that's perhaps how you feel right now. But one thing I would add there is that perhaps you haven't yet found a community of people that are similar minded. So I think if you were, if you haven't, and that's something that can only strengthen you, right? Strengthen this process is in feeling supported in it, because it's like there's this real lack of support. There's tension and chaos created by people that should be offering support, but they're not. They're doing the opposite. They're actually compromising your sense of peace and development. Ugh. This crone, yeah, I think, yeah, like I was just saying, you don't need me to tell you what your intuition is telling you, because you what, because you know how to read it. But it's also, I think, if it does feel to me like some degree of boundaries and cutting cords and protecting and creating barriers between destructive influences is necessary for you to fully understand yourself and who you really are, which is a very developed soul, a very old soul, a very knowledgeable soul that has a lot of maybe latent gifts, or maybe they were latent but that's changing. I think things are being activated in you, Pole 4, and then perhaps it's happening very quickly, unexpectedly. It's about clearing space around yourself or anything that could hinder the development of you becoming who you're supposed to be and your true self, which is perhaps kind of an exceptional person, like somebody that's not like the others. You have certain gifts that other people perhaps don't understand. They don't know how to interpret. You have a way of seeing the world that is unlike many other people, but you aren't alone. You found yourself here to this reading, and there's other people in this, that are looking for similar sorts of insights and guidance, right? I will add like a little personal note here, is that when I first started to meditate many years ago, I, up until that point, had not been remotely, well, I wouldn't say I wasn't remotely spiritual, I would say I was agnostic, but as soon as I started to meditate, I started to have a lot of weird, I guess what I see now as sort of psychic insight. I had all these weird things come through to my head, like things about people, information that would just, and I just had no idea why it was there. I didn't think I was like psychic or anything up until that point, and I was just extremely confused because it was like these little droppings that would cut, like I would just be given information, it would just come from somewhere in my psyche. But my response, because I wasn't surrounded by anyone that was sort of more spiritual or had any of these kinds of experiences, and I confided in the wrong people. I confided in sort of people that were skeptical and quite rationally minded, to the, you know, you can be skeptical and rational but also have a more intuitive side, right? But I confided in the wrong people about it, who sort of judged, and I then judged myself, and I sort of stuffed all of that stuff away for many years, actually. And in the end, that didn't work, and I sort of developed and became myself, and this is part of who I am. You know, I have like a 12th house north node, so that's part of the 12th house is, of course, Neptune's house, and that's part of being who I am, and my own journey is developing these things. And perhaps you're very similar, Pile 4, to me in that way, is that maybe these things are really new to you. You don't know if they're real, or the doubts are perhaps you do know that they're real, but the other people can bring their doubts and their skepticism, and then that muddies the waters and it blocks the development of these things. You don't have to talk to these things about everyone. That's something that I do. I learn when and who that I can talk, share and open to. For instance, when I meet new people, I don't necessarily bring up certain things that I do, like tarot and astrology. I have to feel out whether somebody is receptive to those kind of things, because ultimately it's not even about being other people's skepticism. It's about protecting the things themselves. I think these things are sacred. They're precious. And it's often just a certain kind of ignorance, right, when people shut them down. So I've gone a little bit off track from your reading and telling you more personal stuff here, Pile 4, but I thought that perhaps it would be helpful to know, if you are relating to what I'm saying, that this sense of protecting a certain part of yourself, I completely, I get this, I feel this need to tune out, and perhaps there are, you know, parts of you that, at least in the development stage, if you're feeling more confident at this point in my life, I just sort of get that some people are not into this kind of stuff, or they're not at the point that they want to hear about it. They just don't see life in that way. And but I'm protective of these things, and I should have been more protective of them in the past, so that I could have developed in that way sooner than I did. And I think you are in a process of development, Pile 4, and you do, it's right that you do have to know what to keep to yourself. It's not about keeping secrets, it's about protection and allowing yourself a private space in order to develop things without other people poking and, you know, throwing in their take. These things are not about the logical or rational mind, Pile 4, like... It's not about that. It's about transcending that. It's about different kinds of knowing, right? And I think that that's the path you're on, and yeah, not everyone is going to come along on this path with you. It doesn't mean you have to cut out anyone that doesn't, you know, respond to your slightly witchy, strange side. But you're not alone. There are other weirdos in the world, obviously. And finding a community, and even if it's just going to a meditation class, and people, because you'll find that if people are very committed to meditation, that as soon as, if you're someone that has a strong meditation practice, then of course, like, you intuitive information starts to come in for you, and quite likely, if you're having certain spiritual experiences that make you feel alienated, it's quite likely that, you know, there are people out there, many people out there, that have very similar experiences. Finding a community is really important, but yeah, I think I'll leave it at that, Pile 4. Engage with your intuition. Your intuition has so much to share with you. Know that you're a beautiful, beautiful old soul that has many gifts. If you give them the space to develop, you have so much to offer and so much inside of you. So yeah, I hope that this resonated with some of you out there, and yeah, it was a pleasure, and I look forward to reading for you again sometime. Pile 4. Bye.